The presence of a murderer on the train, gun tucked away inside a black baseball jacket, head bowed and hands steady, causes not a flicker as the metro pulls clear of Taksim station. I am a kindly old man in a white cap. My beard is trimmed, my trousers are only slightly stained with blood where I knelt by the side of a woman who was dead. There is no sign that 60 seconds ago I ran through Taksim in fear of my life, save perhaps a protrusion in the veins on my neck and a sticky glow to my face. Some few meters from me, very few, yet very many by the count of bodies that kept us apart, stood the man with the gun beneath his jacket, with nothing in his look to show that he had just shot a woman in cold blood. His baseball cap pulled down over his eyes declared devotion to Gungorenspor, a football team whose deeds were forever greater in the expectation than the act. His skin was fair, recently tanned by some southern sun, and more recently learning to forget the same. Some 30 people filled the space between us, bouncing from side to side like wavelets in a cup. In a few minutes, police would shut down the line to Sinai. In a few minutes, someone would see the blood on my clothes, observe the fading red footprint I left with every step. It wasn't too late to run. I watched the man in the baseball cap. He too was running, though in a very different manner. His purpose was to blend with the crowd, and indeed, hat pulled down and shoulders curled forward, he might have been any other stranger on the train, not a murderer at all. I moved through the carriage, placing each toe carefully in the spaces between other people's feet. A swaying game of twister played in the busy silence of strangers trying not to meet each other's eyes. At Osmanbey, the train, rather than growing emptier, pressed in tighter with a flood of people before pulling away. The killer stared out the window at the blackness of the tunnel, one hand grasping the bar above, one resting in his jacket, finger perhaps still pressed to the trigger of his gun. His nose had been broken, then restored a long time ago. He was tall without being a giant, hanging his neck and slouching his shoulders to minimize the effect. He was slim without being skinny, solid without being massy, tense as a tiger, languid as a cat. A boy with a tennis racket under one arm knocked against him, and the killer's head snapped up, fingers curling tight inside his jacket. The boy looked away. I eased my way around a doctor on her way home, hospital badge bouncing on her chest, photo staring with grim-eyed pessimism from its plastic heart, ready to lower your expectations. The man in the baseball cap was a bare 3 feet away, the back of his neck flat, his hair trimmed to a dead stop above his topmost vertebrae. The train began to decelerate, and as it did, he lifted his head again, eyes flicking around the carriage. So doing, his gaze fell on me. A moment. First, stony nothing, the stare of strangers on a train, devoid of character or soul. Then the polite smile, for I was a nice old man, my story written in my skin, and in smiling he hoped I would go away, a contact made, an instant passed. Finally, his eyes traced their way to my hands, which were already rising towards his face, and his smile fell as he saw the blood of Josephine Cebula drying in great brown stripes across my fingertips, and as he opened his mouth and began to draw the gun from his shoulder holster, I reached out and wrapped my fingers around the side of his neck and switched. A second of confusion, as the bearded man with the blood on his hands, standing before me, lost his balance, staggered, bounced off the boy with the tennis racket, caught his grip on the wall of the train, looked up, saw me, and as the train pulled into Shizhly Medvedikoi, and with remarkable courage, considering the circumstances, straightened up, pointed a finger into my face, and called out, "Murderer! Murderer!" I smiled politely, slipped the gun already in my hand back into its holster, and as the doors opened behind me, spun out into the throng of the station.